Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Millionaire Real Estate Agent Podcast. I'm Jason Abrams, and this is the place where we lift the curtain on the world of real estate like never before. Every week, I sit down with visionaries, pirates, and mavericks. We're here to document, demonstrate, and most importantly, demystify their game-changing models and systems. What secrets propel them to the top? And how are they living their dreams? This is about passion, it's about strategy, but above all, it's about real, tangible success. So buckle up and let's dive in. This is the Millionaire Real Estate Agent Podcast. Gosh, there is a lot going on in the world. I mean, there's a lot going on in our industry. There's a lot going on in geopolitics. There's a lot going on in my marketplace. There's a lot going on in my family. There's a lot going on in my relationships. There's a lot going on just in my brain. So how do you wake up every day and still get the most out of life? This is a concept about resiliency. How do I wake up and in the face of all the noise that's happening, be resilient and live my best life? Well, today we are going to find out exactly how to do that. We have an award-winning scholar and international speaker who focuses on stress, resiliency, performance, and wellness. She is an incredible author. She wrote one of my favorites, Calm Within the Storm, and Stress Wisely. I'm speaking about none other than Dr. Robyne Hanley-Dafoe. She is absolutely brilliant, and with 2 decades of teaching and research, she is going to tell us exactly how to be resilient every single day. Sit back and buckle up. This is Dr. Robyne. Dr. Robyne, how are you?
Excellent. Excited to be here with you today.
We are so wildly excited to have you here. It's rare that we get someone who wrote the book on it, but you've written plenty of books on it, and we are going to talk about it. On this show, I ask everyone, how did you end up in the greatest industry in the world, which is the real estate business? But I can't ask you that. I will ask you, though, how did you end up becoming a doctor? And then what was the path to writing all these incredible books?
Oh, well, first and foremost, I echo that I think you have a pretty amazing profession, and I'm so excited to connect with your followers here today. So for me, my trajectory into my career as an author, a speaker, a scholar, a researcher, it was just a series of the wrong choices. And what I mean by that is I was like on this trajectory when I was a teenager. I got really derailed and I ended up navigating some really significant challenges as an adolescent. And all of a sudden, after a catastrophic life event that happened, I had a catastrophic car accident. It completely changed the trajectory of where do I go from here. So I got really serious about school. After having, dropped out of high school, I got re-engaged with that process. And then I built this whole trajectory, Jason, of becoming a professor, which was like, that was going to be my ticket. That was going to be the dream job. And thankfully, I was able to do that after many, many years of study, finished a bunch of degrees, became a professor, and realized while after that this was my dream job was actually killing me, and made the decision to leave the academy and become essentially an entrepreneur who offers strategies, tools, coaching, training to groups to learn about human resiliency and high performance in what we consider a pretty non-traditional way. And that brought me to writing the books.
So I want to go back to the accident for a second, because I know the story and you go through the ice. And I mean, this is this crazy thing.
Yeah.
Why does it change the way that you see the world? What actually happens that changes in the way you think?
So I think when you've been put in a situation when you literally are face to face with your own immortality, right? Like you're literally understanding your mortality, that even at 16, I realized this could be it. It changes philosophically, physiologically, how you see the world. And then when your life is spared, when you are actually rescued from the most catastrophic event you've ever experienced and you are pulled out of that water and you have a second chance, you get really serious about how every day matters, and we have to figure out how to make what matters most matter most. So it changes you.
When you end up in this industry, in this profession of being a professor, you must have loved, because when I look at what it takes to become one and the path that you took, this takes a wild amount of dedication. What is it about it that you looked up and said, this isn't good for me? I don't want this anymore. Does that happen gradually or suddenly?
I believe a lot of times when we have, and we talk about this as this idea of the second summit. And what I mean by that is that you kind of get this trajectory of like, okay, this is where I need to get to, this is where I need to go. And you get there and you arrive. And you're absolutely right. There were parts about teaching in the university that I absolutely loved. I loved working with my students. I loved being in the research and like being around thinkers. Like there were so many parts of it that were fantastic. And for all intents and purposes, I looked up, Jason, after 10 years and realized I was missing my children's childhoods.
Oh my gosh.
And it was actually quite an amazing experience where I remember having, again, another season of real challenge at the university. And I was sitting there at the kitchen table at nighttime. And I was talking to my oldest at the time, Hunter. And I was, he asked me, hey, Mom, how was your day? And I was awful. Right. This is another just like all these setbacks and these things outside of my control. And I wasn't loving it anymore, Jason. Like everything was harder than I ever imagined living the dream job was going to be. And Hunter said, Mom, when I'm little, right? So imagine you're talking to a 14-year-old, right? And he said, okay, when I was little, it's like, dude, you're still 14. You're pretty little. But he said, when I was little, you used to tell me, Mama, that I could be anything I wanted to as long as I was disciplined and I showed up. Right? If you had the discipline, you show up, you can be anything you want to be when you grow up. And then he said, Mom, why can't you? Like, why are you in this place where you feel so unhappy and trapped? He's like, I miss you. Like, I miss you and your energy. Like, what's it going to take for you to be whatever you want to be when you grow up? And he's like, what would that be? And I said, dude, I'd be a writer. I'd be working with people, boots on the ground. I wouldn't be talking about this theoretically. Like I would be in the trenches with people saying, hey, let me help you figure out the hard parts of your life better. And then he said, what's that going to take? And I said, dude, it means leaving a permanent, full-time, secure pension benefit job, like literally the golden handcuffs. And he said, so it means you have to bet on yourself. He's like, Mom, I would bet on you every time.
This is a 15-year-old?
14.
14. I want to hire this kid. He sounds like a world-renowned business coach.
Hunter is a remarkable human in terms of his ability to take this mindset, Jason. This is the mindset this kid has. How hard could it be? Like anything he tries to try or anything he embraces, he really comes from that perspective. How hard can it be? Figure it out. And I am so appreciative because I learn from my kids every single day. And now they're 21, 19, and 17. I was able to salvage the last 5 or 6 years and dialed in with my teenagers, enjoyed the season with them, and was able to meet my goals in a different way, in a way that I didn't even know was possible until I started to bet on myself.
One of the things you said that I grabbed onto and I loved, you said, when it comes to my kids, I'm like the golden retriever. Like when they see me, I light up. And I've been getting really purposeful about that. Yeah. Like that first couple of moments when someone sees you, how do you want them to remember that interaction?
Absolutely. And Jason, that's actually one of my favorite, I have so many favorite go-to parenting tips, but that's one of my favorites is this idea that when you reunite with your loved ones, like when you see your people again, have your face light up. And again, the story I shared before was that, my kids tease me that I'm the golden retriever of mothers. Like I just get so freaking excited to see the people that I love. And it changes us, right? In such a positive way where from a physiological perspective, we get this hit of dopamine, we get this release of serotonin. It's like, these are my people. This is where I know how to make what matters most matter most. And when we do that first 5 seconds right, the benefits, oh my gosh, it's remarkable.
I love that. All right, friends, this is the time of the show where we're going to talk models and we're going to talk about the issues that matter most to you. Our notes come out every Thursday. You don't have to take the notes. I'm taking the notes. So if you're bombing down the freeway in the Range Rover, don't worry about it. I'm writing it down. If you don't get them, go to MREAnotes.com and put in your email address and we send them out every Thursday. So, Dr. Robyne, here's the thing. The real estate industry has been a rocky ride the last couple of years. As we record today, the news is on fire with what's going on in the world. All of this can seem wildly overwhelming. How do you help people through it? And if I'm a real estate agent who's been up against it, what's the process I should take in order to thrive and get through all of this?
It's such a big question. And I love this big, brave question. And what I want to be able to offer your team is we use the 5 pillars of resiliency that literally will build you a foundation on which you can show up. And the way that we frame this is what you do in the ordinary times will make you extraordinary when you are called upon. So it's what you do each and every day. It's why my theory is called everyday resiliency, because it's what you do in the ordinary that will make you extraordinary when you need to be. So what we've been able to see in our research, and we've devoted over 20 years in this field, is there's 5 pillars. Number 1 is belonging. You need to have a home team. You need to have this like circle around you of people that matter most. And one of the things that we know is it offers you a hedge of protection from all of the noise, from all of the negativity, all of the fear. So to make this really practical for your team, what I want to do is I'll tell you the pillar and I'll give you some strategies or tactics. Okay. So sense of belonging. We've already established that. Be excited to see the people that matter most to you. Pay attention to the people around you. A practice that you can also do before you ever open your phone in the morning or start work, I want you to sit with, text, or call a loved one. Someone that is like on your home team. It might be your friend. It could be, that super close colleague. Before you even get into the work or before you start responding to the clients and responding to all those bosses and all those different places, connect with somebody that's like, no matter what, I'm your ride or die. I got you. They're going to cheer you on. They're going to give you, maybe let you borrow some courage for that day, right? Maybe it's like, hey, you know what, Jason, I'm not feeling it really today, but I have these really big appointments. And they're going to say, what are you talking about? Of course you got it, right? Like your survival rate is 100% for bad stuff, right? Like you're in this, right? So before you open yourself up to the business world, either sit with, call, or text your people.
I'm calling you, just so you know. You're going to start to see it every morning. You're my new person.
There you go. And what's so important, and this is what I think, especially for high performers, we have to have a circle of people, whoever those people are, that when we talk to them, we're not bragging, we're just giving updates. Because if you're reaching out to someone and you're like, oh, well, I'm scared to tell them that I just had this massive sale or I have this big opportunity and you need some guidance, a little bit of coaching or just a little bit of camaraderie around it, but you're like, oh, well, I don't want to like embarrass them or offend them. It's like when I check in with my people, I'm not bragging. We're just having updates and conversations because I'm surrounded by the right people.
I love that. Gary always says that the road of entrepreneurship can be a lonely one. Mm-hmm. And, mainly because so many of us are business owners with no employees or 1 or 2 employees. That's isolating if you're not careful.
Absolutely. And one of the things we often talk about in our work with leaders is if you get to the top and you're alone, you didn't do it right, because you need to be bringing people alongside you. Now, they don't even have to be from your profession or your field, but find another high performer in another area. Maybe it's a broker, maybe it's a financial planner, maybe it's an insurance person. Like find another person who's in a similar trajectory, wanting to skill up, level up, wanting to be of service and like be wildly successful, because that's going to be the conversations that are going to elevate you the most.
How does this show up in the research? Because the thing that I find wildly attractive about the way you think, you're not just into mindset and you're not just guessing on things that you've noticed anecdotally. You're wildly research-driven.
Yes, absolutely. So we see, for example, that you will have an increase in performance by 15 to 20% by the highest component person within your circle of excellence. So if you surround yourself with people who are excellent, you will increase your performance. And where we see this in the research is that when we take Olympic athletes and they are hitting their personal best, they are hitting these amazing milestones, we don't leave them there. They go now and train with the person who is like on their heels, right? They're going to go train next to the other persons, maybe even some of their highest competition, because as soon as we put 2 high performers beside each other, they're going to increase their performance by 15 to 20% simply by proximity. This is why our circle of influence matters.
Unbelievable. All right. So number 1 is belonging. What's number 2?
I love this. So number 2 is perspective. Now, we look at perspective a wee bit different than a lot of other folks, Jason, because most people are talking about perspective. They're talking about mindset. attitude, our thoughts, our patterns of behavior, which, yes, that's important and that's part of it, but that's only half the story. Perspective is also the heart. It's trusting your intuition. It's being able to minimize that delta between your thoughts and your feelings, being able to operate in a place where those are in alignment. Because if you show up and you are like seeing clearly and your heart is aligned with the work that you do, you're unstoppable. So when we think about perspective, it's being able to see the big picture and recognize, and this is so similar to what they talk about in The One Thing, is this idea that the little things aren't that little after all, right? The little things make up the bigger picture. So it's being present to, in this moment, what is it that matters most? And then how do I make it matter most?
I love the idea, but again, now I'm thinking about the research. It could sound squishy.
Yeah.
Right? This idea of perspective.
Yep.
How'd you study that?
Well, it's pretty wild. And this is something, again, I love that kind of balance between the woo-woo and the science, right? Where it's like, yeah, some of this might feel woo-woo, but actually it's quantum physics. The heart actually can hold memory. So understanding that there are components within the heart muscle that actually can have that sense of fondness. So for example, if I was to ask you right now, I want you to take a moment, I want you to think back to maybe it was a family vacation. Or think back to high school and it was just like this song came on and there was this like album, maybe a CD, a record, where there's no judgment, whatever that piece of music is. And think back to that song or maybe even your first concert, right? Like sit with fondness, like fondness. Now, do you feel fondness in your frontal cortex, in your forehead, or do you feel it in your heart?
That's wild. I was thinking my first concert, Weird Al with the Monkees, by the way.
So good.
It's a great show. I literally felt that just now.
Yeah, in our heart, right? So, and again, that's not woo. It's literally where the energy is. And when you think about how the brain will trigger a thought, and what we talk about is this myelin sheathing is what creates, it's almost like this fatty substance that these memories can go really fast. It can travel quickly. And again, this is a full body experience. Now, on the other side of that, I'll give you an example. When we talk about like anxiety, like you were saying about your real estate agents, like, gosh, they're in the thick of it right now. Anxiety is our nervous system, right? It's in our nervous system, and your nervous system runs from the tip of your head to the tip of your toes. So anxiety is not in just your head. Anxiety is a full body experience. So again, when we think about perspective and we tie it up with that scholarship, Jason, it's this idea that this stuff isn't just in our head, it is in our body. Again, that's not woo-woo, it's the science. So being able to, for example, if you're like, feeling really anxious, right? And you realize all these thoughts are swirling around, one of the best ways to start to channel some of that anxiety is to get into your body. So we know steady state cardio, going for a walk. You want to biohack it? Go for a walk outside, right? So using our movement as a way to help process emotion is a practice to do.
You talked about this idea that if you have a feeling and you don't deal with it, it can live in the nervous system for years.
Up to 7 years, the research is suggesting. Yeah.
And if you do deal with it in the moment, you can process it in 90 seconds.
90 seconds. The only outlier to that is grief. So grief rewrites us, right? Grief is an emotion and it's an embodied experience that whenever we're talking about feelings and emotions in the research, we always put that little bit of an asterisk about grief because it behaves differently. What we do know, though, is if you take glad, sad, mad, or angry, right, our core emotion, what we know is that if we experience it, again, it can dissipate in about 90 seconds. It serves its point. It brings it to your attention. It lets you know you're happy or you're not safe, right? It gives its job. It gets done. But again, if we internalize it and we just keep ignoring and overriding these emotions, all of a sudden they start to have this cumulative effect or a compound effect in our body, and they have to go somewhere. And so often we start to see them manifest into illnesses. And again, that's not this just like, and Dr. Kessel wrote the best book about this, where he wrote the book called The Body Keeps the Score and talks about how trauma gets stored in our body. And so it's so important that we process our emotion. And what's so interesting on that note is if you think even just on average, if we have, 4,000 thoughts a day, just like playing around, just on average 4,000 thoughts a day. And a lot of those thoughts are activating emotion, but we're not even paying attention to it, right? Like, I think it really speaks to why all of a sudden things feel so overwhelming.
God, that's such a big idea. When you mentioned this whole live with it for 90 seconds or live with it for 7 years, the next question became, well, how do you actually experience it? And I found your answer on one hand so simple and pure, and on the other hand so infuriating, which is you simply sit with it and feel it.
Feel it.
And I was like, okay, well, how about a different idea? Do you have a different solution? Because that's wildly uncomfortable if you are an expert at not feeling.
100%. And that practice of not feeling has likely served you very well to this point. That's the thing that we noticed. It's like ignore and override is a great strategy until it's not. And when it's not a great strategy, people end up very unwell. And what suffers often is your well-being or your relationships, right? So there's a high cost to ignoring our emotion. So if I'm feeling super cheesed or angry about something, yeah, it doesn't feel good to sit there and feel disappointment, but jumping into this toxic positivity where it's like, okay, so let's say, for example, you were working really hard on a sale and you lost the sale and it went to somebody else. And instead of sitting there being like, okay, this feels like rejection, this feels like anger, this feels like disappointment. And instead of like just letting that be, and you're like, well, I'm happy for the other person, right? Like I need to be grateful. It's like, F that noise. Our bodies are not designed to cheer somebody else on when we're in that moment. Let ourselves be sad and be like, man, I'm disappointed that I missed that. I'm disappointed that didn't land. And do you know what? I'm confident that if it's meant for me, it's going to find me. And if it's not, you know what? I'm going to let that one go. So we get ourselves in the driver's seat of how we are going to work or digest or process the emotion. It's the same example, Jason, if somebody's like really keyed up and really upset and you're like, oh my gosh, don't worry. You're like, oh my gosh, I never thought of that. I should have never not worried in the first place. Thank you, wise one, for... Yeah.
It's like my go-to line when someone's crying and I just say, stop crying.
Yeah.
It works every time.
Every time.
By the way, Dr. Rob, you can have that one. You can use that on your patients. It's my gift.
Thank you. Thank you. Absolutely. So again, instead of saying like, oh, like, I'm disappointed, just let yourself feel disappointed. And if you literally just sit there being like, yeah, man, I'm so upset that didn't work out. Just sit with it and just breathe through it. Just be present to it. Don't scroll on your phone. Don't put more stimuli in there. Just literally be like, man, this sucks. Okay. And just keep breathing. And then all of a sudden you're going to realize it's going to just actually suck a little bit less. And then, 60 seconds, 90 seconds, you're back in the game, right? You're back in the game.
So I got belonging as the first one. I got perspective as number 2. What's number 3?
Number 3 is acceptance. And this ties into what we were just talking about as well, about working within our controllables. What is within your control and what is outside of your control. And high performers have habits of mind that keep them focused on their controllables. So they're the habits of mind that keep them focused on their controllables. So even just to take a moment to reflect, do we spend more time thinking about what we have versus what we do not have? Do we spend more time focusing on what we can do in a situation versus what we cannot do? High performers make sure that they're very economical about their resources of attention and focus. And if there's only so much resourcing to go around with my attention and my focus, I'm going to channel it in a way where I have the most agency.
Gosh, that makes absolute perfect sense. This concept of the gap and the gain. And are you spending more time on where you've come from or where you still have to go? So what are some of the tactics top performers use to stay in that mindset?
So I think one of the biggest ones that's often underutilized by the average person is simply awareness. If we're not aware, and this isn't about, mindfulness necessarily. This isn't about like meditation. It's literally just being in the moment. Because if we're not in the moment, if we're not careful, our thoughts are going to pull us into 2 directions. One's going to be into the past, and we're going to feel depressed, and we're going to feel regret and, missed opportunities or losses. Or if we're, again, not careful, we'll get pulled into the future, and we're going to feel anxious. We're going to feel restless. It's going to feel very uncertain. Where you have the most control is immediately in front of you. What's my next right move? What's my next right thought? One of the questions I love to ask myself if I'm kind of in this moment is, if I need this to work out, what's that one thing that I can do in the moment that will not make this any worse? So not so what's the one thing that's going to get me closer to my goal or make it better? It's like, what's the thing that I don't want to do because I know it will make it worse? More often than not right now, people are using their phones as distractions. The research suggests we look at our phone 262 times a day.
Get out.
260. And that's not an adolescent. Like that is not somebody like the average bear. And I would say your group probably is double that.
We're way above average.
You are average on all the scores, on all the measures, right? I would say, I know my very dear friends in real estate, they are checking their phone way more than 262 times a day. So in this moment, if I'm trying to make good choices and I'm working with my controllables, I might say, what should I not be doing right now? Probably scrolling my phone mindlessly.
That's so good.
So I think there's this idea that we always have to do more. I do think there's a place of recognizing what if I stop doing is actually going to get me closer to my goal. What do I stop doing in that moment, or what do I do to not make this worse? And just as another little kind of parenting little tidbit here, when my kids are going through something big, and I often will ask them, what's one thing I can do that won't make this any worse? And it changes and it does what we call a pattern interrupt, Jason, where all of a sudden they're like, okay, instead of trying to say, what can I do to make this better? Right? I can't probably make it better, but I can make sure this doesn't get any worse. So I will be your stopgap for you. And it might be like, even just yesterday, Jax had a really tricky day on the court in basketball, and he got into the car. We're driving home. I'm like, dude, what's one thing I can do right now that won't make this moment any worse? And he's just sitting there and I'm like, French fries. I'm like, will French fries make this loss harder to accept? And he's like, nope. And then boom, we're hitting the drive-thru and we're getting some French fries, right? Because that kid needed some salt because he was so dehydrated, right? So again, it's just being very present to in the moment versus not having those habits that are taking us too far in the future or too far in the past.
I know for a fact that everyone listening to us is doing one of two things. They're either driving in the car or they're on the treadmill. That's our audience.
Those are your audience. I love it.
Everybody in the car is pulling in to get some French fries.
Do it.
Right now.
Yes. Good ones.
I've never known a day where French fries make anything worse.
I completely agree. And you know what? Life is too short to eat bad ones. Like literally
yes.
Good French fries. Just take a moment. And remember, you can't hate yourself healthy. So enjoy it. Right?
It's so good. You can't hate yourself healthy. Okay, acceptance. What's number 4?
Number 4, and this is what, I think the world needs such a big dose of, is the variable of hope. Choosing to live hope-filled. Hope changes us as well physiologically and psychologically, like looking for those hope-filled moments, those moments where we see good. And some people like to call them glimmers, whatever that is, but just look for, and just one little caveat on this though, this is not silver linings in difficult situations, because I don't believe every situation has a silver lining. Some situations just suck. Some situations are just awful. And I don't believe telling somebody who's going through an acute crisis that, there must be a plan or all of this works out. No, some things are horrible and awful. Not everything has a silver lining, but there is a lesson, right? There's a lesson in what we can figure out from the blast radius of hurt.
What's the science around hope? Because hope is one of those things that there's a million different people that say you need it.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen a ton of research on it. How do you study that?
Well, my friend, feels like a shameless plug, which it is not. My 3rd book is about hope, and it comes out in February because, again, I identified that the world, this is what was missing. There's this pain right now. The world has this grip of despair. We have to get back into hope. And what I did in that book was actually looked at it over the centuries, because people have been using hope as a strategy all the way back to the beginning of time. And this idea, and what I've done in the first few chapters in that book is I actually braided all of that together to see this is the through line for every civilization and every group who has ever gone through a difficult experience, difficult season. They were able to find a through line of hope. And the through line of hope shows up in resiliency. It shows up in well-being. It's trusting that better days are ahead. It's trusting that we're going to be okay.
Give me one tactic to practice hope.
Oh, I love this. Okay, so before you get into your day, and again, our mornings are so crucial, not because you have to wake up at 5 a.m. because that's when winners wake up. That's not actually true unless they go to bed at 8 p.m. So I have a bit of a beef with that idea about 5 a.m. But I am a big advocate of—
I want you to know, we have 1 million people listening. We know that. We've studied it. But we could say we make the show for Gary Keller because Gary loves listening to the show. And he says the same thing you do.
Oh, really?
Which is Anybody can be a morning person. You just have to go to bed early enough.
Yes, absolutely. And that's my beef with this as somebody who cares about our physiology. It's just like, because the misconception is you have to be a night owl, super productive, wildly, all of this late hours of the day. And then you're supposed to be up at 5 a.m. It's like, no, like you have to go to bed early and then you can wake up early and work with 7 to 8 hours of good, solid sleep. And then you're much more positioned to do good work.
All right, so I go to bed early. I wake up. How do I use hope?
Yeah, so this is how you use hope. Thank you for bringing us back. I want us to kind of, when we first kind of open the day, is we start with gratitude, right? What are 3 new things that you are thankful for this day? Like being open to the feeling of gratitude is going to cultivate a hope practice.
There's a ton of people out there who are rolling their eyes because the idea of a gratitude practice has been something that we've all known about.
Yeah.
And for some reason, not enough folks do it.
Yeah.
Number one, why do you think that is? And number two, is there any one piece of data you can give them that would change their mind?
Absolutely. And so why do people not do it? Because I think there's this misconception, right? Like it's just, yeah, whatever. However, what we know is when we're occupying that mindset of gratitude, what happens is our body releases oxytocin, which is the natural pain reliever. So all of a sudden you have this natural pain reliever, which is taking the edge off the scary parts of your life, which gets you to soften your nervous system, which means now we're taking deeper exhalations than we are inhalations. And all of a sudden we slow down to the point where we're paying attention to what matters most. And we have improvements in performance. We have increased error detection. We have better relationships simply because our body, and we're using our natural pharmacy of using that dopamine, using that serotonin, using that oxytocin to slow our nervous down to the place where our brain says, I'm safe. And when I am safe and secure, I'm going to be way more productive. I am going to be way more functional. I'm going to be way more successful than if I'm sitting in this scarcity mindset where I'm feeling fear and I'm feeling trepidation, I'm feeling anxiety, and I'm feeling worry, and I feel overwhelmed. That is nobody's optimal state of performance. So gratitude is the quickest way to activate our natural pharmacy.
Is that right? Is that?
Yeah, I wrote a book on it, dude. Yeah,
oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the happiness chemicals, right? It's the dopamine, it's the serotonin, it's the oxytocin, and it's a little dash of adrenaline on the side, right? So,
okay, friends, if you're out there and you've heard the gratitude thing a million times and you've rolled your eyes, which, by the way, I was kind of asking for me just now, that may have been the greatest answer in the history of podcast excellence.
Thank you, Jason.
Your own personal pharmacy.
Yeah. So I could go for a 3-mile run, or I can sit there and count my blessings.
I'm counting blessings.
I'm counting blessings. Like every time.
All right. So hope is number 4. What's number 5?
This is my favorite part of all of this as it kind of lands the plane is the variable of humor. Resilient people are so funny, and it's a dark humor. Like it literally is this dark humor where at first we thought it was a coping mechanism, that people weren't taking things seriously, or they were just kind of being a little bit kind of, transient with some of these big ideas. But then what we saw is it actually is a strategy. So for example, when you laugh, your body releases a natural tranquilizer. So for that moment in time, your pain receptors are blocked. You cannot feel pain. And then you just get to be in this very precious place where you can respond versus react. And resilient people know how to respond to what's in front of them.
What's the difference between responding and reacting?
So I would say reactivity is more of a reflex, right? It's the idea of that fight or flight or freezing or fawning where you don't get to choose how to respond. You are in that place of the reflex making the decisions. Our frontal cortex, the front of our brain, it is not making good choices when we are in a place of reactivity. It's survival, right? It's literally that little lizard brain just trying to find either heat, safety, or food. That's who's kind of making the decisions. But as soon as we're in that place where we're regulated, we're feeling really solid, which can be activated simply by, again, our exhalation being longer than our inhalation. And I would tell you the vast majority of people, they're taking lots of short little inhalations and a few little exhalations. Just slow it down. And when we are slow, we are smooth, and then we become fast in the right direction.
I'm listening to you, and so much of this to me, you could say it's an ancient wisdom, because I have to think that someone knew about this before and you're rediscovering so much of it. Do you ever feel like an archaeologist?
I love that question. Yes, absolutely. Because one of the things that I'm so curious about as a behaviorist is every generation, and there's research that shows this, every generation feels as if their generation had it harder than the future generation. So your grandparents feel that their generation was harder than your parents, and your parents are going to feel like it was harder for me than it is for your teens, and your teens are going to look at toddlers and be like, oh my gosh, I had to go through war, right? And what's so remarkable is I got really curious. Well, if everyone thinks it's getting worse and harder, what's missing? Like, why is that the case? If we're evolving and we're supposed to be getting, more streamlined, things should be with more ease. We have more access to technology, access to information. Why is this getting so much more complicated and harder? And so that very much got me kind of doing this back reverse scaffolding to be like, okay, like I imagine the Egyptians thought this was pretty hard too, right? I imagine the Romans were quite concerned. Let's not even talk about the Spartans, right? Like history gives us so many interesting lessons. But what's so phenomenal is that the human body has been relatively consistent in those different iterations of our evolution. And so what I'm seeing right now, for example, we can pick up our devices and we can look at all of these pieces of information. And our nervous system, Jason, is not designed to take in all this information. So we're actually in this juxtaposition of just like jargon monoxide in terms of all of this information that's coming at us. And our brains are being like, okay, can we go back to the time when we were in caves and just had to find some berries, right? Like the good old days, right? Because our nervous system hasn't evolved as quickly as our technology.
So raising young people brings up an interesting question. How do you deal with the technology of the day and balancing brains that are still being developed and all the things that go along with it?
Yeah. Oh, one of my favorite moments is when somebody asked that to Dr. Jonathan Hu. He wrote the book, The Anxious Generation. He's a social psychologist. Somebody asked him, when do you give a kid a phone, right? When do you give kid access to technology? And Dr. Jonathan said, when you want their childhood to end.
Wow, that's a good answer.
When you want their childhood to end, because as soon as you pass that device, you've lost control. Now, that doesn't mean we can't give our children technology. It's that we want to teach them how to be creators of technology, not consuming and consumption. So we want them to use it as tools. We want them to use it in ways in which it doesn't make or break their day. And when we look at the average teenager, for example, is using between 7 to 9 hours of technology a day, we want to get really strategic about what that looks like, because there's a great example where they talk about, imagine if there was like a casino that opened up next to a playground, right? Everyone would be like, whoa, that's so dangerous for our kids. Well, my friends, there's more dopamine handing your kid an iPad than there is at a casino, right? But it's the same system. It's this mindless behavior that occasionally we get a reward, right? We scroll through, digital dopamine. All of a sudden we get the cat video. Oh, we get a good hit of dopamine, and then we go through. Kids don't have the self-regulation yet to stick handle that. And I would even argue most of us as grownups, if we're not well-resourced, if we're tired, if we're stressed, if we're hungry, if we're feeling disconnected, if we're feeling overwhelmed, we don't have the resources either to handle that technology. So we want to have just a wee bit of guardrails around our behavior. So again, that ties back to what we said earlier of, in this moment, what should I not be doing right now is actually probably more helpful than asking what should I be doing right now. And if your kryptonite is a technology and scrolling, then put up some guardrails on that behavior.
So good. Okay, 2 things. Dr. Robyne, can we get you back when the book is getting closer to coming out?
I would love that. I would absolutely love that.
We would love to have you. Number 2, our people are going to want more of you in their head all day, every day. How can people find you? Where do you want to send them?
Yeah, so come visit me in social. That's the easiest way where you can connect everything. It's Dr. Robyne. And yeah, I am so excited to keep these conversations going.
Friends, I'm going to tell you this. 2 thumbs up. I've read all of her books, and so I'm telling you, you want to read them. And if you're out there, we have listeners in every industry. If you're having events and you are looking for someone to come in and change people's lives, you got to get a hold of Dr. Robyne. I got to tell you, since we met last, people are still talking about the impact that you've had on their lives. And I hear it every day. And so on behalf of a very grateful industry, thank you for everything you're doing.
Oh my goodness, Jason, thank you so much. And I love, just if I can add one little note on that, I ran into somebody this past weekend and they were a KW from the Kingston, Ontario, Canada area. And he's like, "Are you the woman that says if you swear you live longer?" And I was so excited to say, "Hello, yes, I am." And we had an amazing KW conversation. And he had apparently been at the family reunion in Las Vegas. And I have never been recognized at a basketball event as the woman who teaches swearing. But I have to tell you, it was pretty special. And KW made that happen. So thank you.
If you're going to be known for something, it might as well
right?
that.
Oh, so proud.
Dr. Robyne, thanks again.
Take good care, Jason.
I could listen to her all day. This is one of those episodes where I geeked out as the host because I literally could listen to her all day. She gets it, and she is so deep on the research. When you talk about resiliency, she puts it into these 5 buckets, right? Belonging. I have to feel like I belong. Perspective. Acceptance. Hope, and humor. She even went on to say she has a whole new book coming out around hope. Now, here's the thing. I'm not going to recap for you what you just learned, but I want to say this. She has a defined model for how she practices resiliency in her life. That's my big takeaway. By the way, that's Gary Keller's mantra in his head all day long. For those of you unfamiliar, Gary Keller, together with Jay Papasan and Dave Jenks, may he rest in peace, wrote the book The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, which is the namesake for the show. And Gary always says that for the things that matter most in life, you have to have a model that you refer to every day to make sure that you get the most out of the time. If you don't have a model, you never actually make it. You don't. You get something, but maybe not what you deserve. And so Dr. Robyne wakes up every day understanding how important resiliency is, knowing that how she feels inside is going to dictate how she interacts with the outer world. So she has a model, belonging, perspective, acceptance, hope, and humor around how she's going to be resilient. Do you? That's the question. Do you practice resilience, and do you have a model around it? And maybe some of you are saying, you know what? Resilience isn't my thing, Jay. No problem. What is your thing? And do you have a model around your thing? That's what this whole show, that's why the People's Podcast is the #1 podcast in the space, because we wake up every day looking for the models to drive a big life. That's the key. Here's what I want you to do. Make a list of the things that matter most to you. Then put a check mark next to the ones that you have a model for. And then the ones that you don't, let's go find them together. Go forth and do likewise. There it is. That wraps another episode. Friends, I don't know what you're taking out of this. I really don't. I'll tell you what I want you to be taking out of it, which is these are the people that are having tremendously big lives. And the reason it's happening is because they're setting up the models and systems to do just that. Gary Keller told me that leadership is teaching people how to think so that they do the things they need to do when they need to do them, so that ultimately they get the things they want when they want to have them. And that's what I want for you. You're all leaders, but it begins with leading ourselves. If you're enjoying this podcast, I want you to click the subscribe button anywhere that you get your podcasts. We want to be the voice in your head every single week, and every week we're dropping new content. We also send out a newsletter at the conclusion of every show to make sure that you get the highest points and the models and systems that were discussed. So if you want to sign up, I need your name and your email address. Head over to the millionaireagentpodcast.com. millionaireagentpodcast.com. Enter your name and your email address, and every week that newsletter will be in your box. Friends, you just went on a journey. I hope that what happens between now and the next time we meet is absolutely wonderful for you. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next week.
This podcast is for general informational purposes only. The views, thoughts, and opinions of the guest represent those of the guest and not Keller Williams Realty LLC and its affiliates, and should not be construed as financial, economic, legal, tax, or other advice. This podcast is provided without any warranty or guarantee of its accuracy, completeness, timeliness, or results from using the information. Warning: you must comply with the TCPA and any other federal, state, or local laws, including for B2B calls and texts. Never call or text a number on any do not call list. And do not use an autodialer or artificial voice or pre-recorded messages without proper consent. Contact your attorney to ensure your compliance.